Hey friend, I'm Micah McCurry. You're listening to the Bible Tract Echoes radio broadcast, and I'm so very thankful that you are. Today is the last day of a very special week of broadcasts. We've had a lot of fun. We've laughed. We've even seen a few tears, a little bit, as we've had the opportunity to fellowship with Pastor Mark Smith, the man whose role I now get to fill, the man who was kind enough to hand me the baton here at Bible Tracts Incorporated, probably someone you heard on the radio for about 15 years across so many different radio platforms. Brother Smith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, not only for today, just inviting me and letting me be part of this week and to be part of the ongoing things that God is doing here at Bible Tracts Incorporated.
God truly has been good to us, as evidenced by the fact that those of you that are listening to the radio, you might not be able to see this, but if you, after the broadcast is over, you can pop over to YouTube or Facebook, because we have a very good-looking, may I say so, Brother Smith, studio audience. This is the first week of Bible Tract Echoes we've ever had a studio audience, and we have a full row of young people on the front row here, and
all smiling, of course.
All smiling. We didn't talk about that before we started. You got to have a smile on your face because there is a camera facing your direction right now. So big smiles, big smiles. So if you hear anything going on in the background, it may just be our studio audience. But you got to stand in front of so many different churches across America, really, in front of crowds just like this. And you got to tell them something about Bible Tracts Incorporated for about 15 years of your life that you invest in this ministry. What would you tell a crowd like this, especially these young people, have such a long life, Lord Terry's coming, such a long life ahead of them? What did you tell people when you were the representative, the director of Bible Tracts Incorporated?
Well, because these young people are here, and I love young people, I still speak in camps to 8 to 11-year-olds, keeping like-minded people together. But so many young people are into and loving the technology of the age. And please, let's use all the technology that God has provided to share the gospel. But the tried and true method, well, any method that gets the gospel out is what we want to promote. When we think of gospel tracts, a lot of young people haven't even heard of them because their noses are into the little phone of theirs and playing games. But we still have young people who are catching the vision to say, hey, I can give this gospel tract to my friend at school, to my friend that I play ball with, or I'm on a sports team with, or whatever. And that piece of paper goes into a pocket, goes into a gym bag, goes into somebody's hat or whatever, and that gets read later on, and lo and behold, God begins to work. So seeing another generation of young people who are interested in what God is doing around the world with the gospel and interested in the tool of gospel tracts excites me. There are here in the audience some very old young people. There's some 9-year-olds that sure look like they're at least 65 and things who they did not have the technology back then. So we were looking for ways that we could do, and gospel tracts are there. Let's not get rid of something that does work, no matter if it's in a technological advanced society or not.
Well, I remember when I was really interviewing for the position that God has now given me here, and interviewing to take your spot, as you knew God was leading you on, and some wise men, some mature Christians, looked at me, 27 years old at the time, and they asked a very pointed question, a good question to ask a guy who's going to be the director of a tract ministry. Do you believe in gospel tracts?
Yeah.
And I didn't really have to think about my answer, because I was blessed to have grown up in a family that used gospel tracts, but the background that I have, knowing how to do social media and websites and all that type of stuff, my answer was unequivocally yes. And the reason for me is because in this virtual digital world we live in now, where everybody lives through this little device that we keep in our pocket called a phone, right? It doesn't just make calls anymore. There's a whole lot more. Everybody lives through this.
Yeah.
The physical, tactile sensation of handing someone something or them picking it up and reading it, and it's no longer on a screen. It's in their hands. It's paper. That can't be replaced. I think it's more valuable today than it was in years past.
I think so, because of the very thing you just said. Everybody is looking at their phone, looking at their tablet, whatever. But having an eyeball-to-eyeball conversation is lost. And when somebody has enough interest in another person we believe people are made in the image of God. They're valuable to Christ. They need to be valuable to us when we look at them eyeball to eyeball, smile, pick up some little note to begin a conversation, and before we get done, said, "Hey, can I just share with you something that's been a real blessing in my life?"
Amen.
All of a sudden, that half a minute, 1 minute, minute and a half conversation is probably a longer conversation than that person has had with another individual in a long time.
Yes, sir.
And it's meaningful, and they're going to read that thing.
Absolutely. During these past couple of years, and don't even need to go into details. You know what I'm talking about when I talk about pandemics and all that type of stuff. In my opinion, people in some places have become more open to the gospel than they were in any time since like 9/11.
Yeah.
Because mortality actually means something to them now.
Yeah.
The fact that I don't know where I'll spend eternity. One little thing, this is just a small thing, but sometimes the practical stuff helps, right? I remember you did Tract and Truth Tuesdays, right?
Yes, I did.
But to think about, I would go through a drive-through and I'd ask someone and say, "How you doing?" That's a standard question, right? And you get the stock answer.
Yeah.
"I'm doing great, thank you." And they try to close that window at Wendy's as fast as they can so I have to talk to you. You say, "Oh, how are you really doing?"
Yeah.
Just literally repeat the question a little slower,
Yeah.
and act like you mean it, and truly mean it. And you'd be amazed. I asked them a question twice, same question, and people will say, "Behind on the rent, got my hours cut here, don't have how I'm going to do it. My grandpa's in the hospital, I can't visit him because of what's going on right now." And they'll like pour their heart out on you. And maybe because there's a line behind you, you can't go into a full gospel diatribe. But you say, "Hey, here's something a friend of mine wrote. Would you mind reading this when you go on break?" It's amazing how just that small human connection can make all the difference.
It is. That's why here at Bible Tracts Incorporated, we have all these different tracts that share the gospel, that come at the gospel from a different life situation, like what you just said. Where are the dead is one of the questions.
Yes.
You meet somebody, "My grandmother just died. I am sorry to hear that. Tell me about your grandma." Number one, you take an interest in people, and all of a sudden you become one of their best friends because during the pandemic, people became gun shy of each other. Now, here's somebody that cares enough to ask the question. But share the gospel. The track that we have about mothers, I've used that one all over the place in very humorous ways. But hey, thanks for being a faithful mom. Don't know the lady, but if she survived motherhood, she was a faithful mom. And let me say, I can't say thank you to my mom anymore. She's in heaven. I want you to go to heaven. Here's a story about how a godly mom impacts lives.
It almost sounds like you're using your imagination and figuring out ways to get the gospel to people. It's almost like you think God lets us use our imagination. And there's not just one size fits all.
No.
We have 50 different gospel tracts.
Yeah.
There's a gospel tract that fits every circumstance, and they fit everywhere. They're not localized to north central Illinois where you and I are sitting right now.
Yeah.
Actually, in the audience right now, I can see on the front row, we got a lot of, and they're still smiling, right? Everyone's still smiling. I see smiles, good. A lot of folks from Illinois. I see on the second row some folks from Illinois, and on the third row some folks from Illinois.
Wisconsin.
And then, ma'am, right over here, Miss Nancy, you are from what city and state?
Wisconsin.
Very good. How long of a drive was it for you to come today? A little over 3 hours. That's an investment of time. Miss Lauren on the third row, and she and her family have been friends of our family and extended family for years now. Got to go to college with some, and it's just a phenomenal thing. Miss Lauren, city and state, where'd you come from? Charlotte, North Carolina. Now that's a little bit. I think she might have one up your distance because you came from Pennsylvania.
But
there's
we're
one
not
more.
done.
We're not done. But Brother Smith, we want to introduce. So Miss Vanessa, where did you come from to get here today? City and state. Garden Grove. Can we give a round of applause? I mean, we have a live studio audience. I think we can give a round of applause to that. That is phenomenal. Thank you so much. Now, one of the reasons she came, now I can ask this question for the Pearson kids that are right up front here. Do gospel tracts work in Illinois? They said yes. They even nodded their heads along. The radio audience can't see it, but they said yes too. Let's see, Ms. Lauren, they work in North Carolina, don't they? Yeah, I've talked to your father-in-law, and he ordered a bunch of gospel tracts from us. They work there. Ms. Nancy, they work in Wisconsin, right? Brother Smith, they work in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely, they do.
Miss Vanessa, they work in California.
Absolutely.
I was talking to a missionary in New Zealand just a day or two ago. We sent 250,000 gospel tracts just left to go there because they work there too. Friends of mine in Ghana, West Africa, they work there. We're sending another 250,000 to Ecuador, to Southeast Asia. Brother Smith, these tracts, they work a lot better when you use them, don't they?
Having them sent to a location in a box and staying in the box makes the box nice. But it does nothing for the gospel because there it sits until somebody, like you say, picks up the tract, goes out, and gives it away.
You may be listening right now. You may have listened all week, and you're like, okay, all right, I got the hint. I figured out the clue bird has landed. That's on Final Approach, right? You may be wondering, how can I get gospel tracts? Well, right now, as I'm speaking to you, you can go to our website, BibleTractsInc.org, and you can start with a sample booklet. It'll give you a taste, an introduction to our ministry, but it'll also give you a little blurb, a little note about every single gospel tract that we have. We'll send it to you free of charge, along with as many gospel tracts as you can humanly use. If you can use them, our gospel tracts, Brother Smith, they didn't do any good sitting on the warehouse shelves in Bloomington, Illinois. Now in our new building, there's nothing special about this building. They don't do any good on our warehouse shelves. We got about a minute and a half. Give us one final charge about why everyone listening right now, why we need to use gospel tracts.
There are some people that God will save if they get the gospel, but there are people that we will not have the opportunity to sit down and go through the Romans road one-on-one with them or some other approach, biblical approach to sharing the gospel. They don't have that time. You don't have that time. We're like the proverbial two ships passing in the night, but caring enough. Again, I cannot overemphasize the eyeball-to-eyeball contact that says to the person, you're valuable to me. I'm looking you square in the eye because you're valuable, and say, this is meaningful in my life. It'll help you. I cannot tell you how critical that is of getting the gospel in places. There are places in the world, I don't know if they've done a survey here, but places in the world that if you give a tract out, it'll be read by 6 to 9 people. That's a lot of gospel going out through one tract. Probably it's not that high in the United States, but I do know this, that a whole lot of gospel tracts are read because somebody cared enough to eyeball say to them, this matters, eternity matters. I want you to have this. Left the hotel this morning. Put my tip in the lady going to clean our room at the hotel. Put it in there. She came, handed it to her, and say, "Thank you for the clean room. I hope your heart is clean."
Amen.
Hope your heart is clean. This will tell you how to have a clean heart.
Amen. Friends, have you got the picture yet? I hope you join us next week on the Bible Tract Echoes radio broadcast. Thank you for listening today. My prayer is you have a great day for His glory. Now, use gospel tracts. We'll talk to you soon. God bless.